Hi, welcome to Mongolian Music Buffet. This is the beginning of a series of videos where I will be talking about folk songs made by Mongols. In this first video, I'll provide a brief introduction to Mongolian dialects. So why am I talking about this on a music channel? First of all, I think having a general idea where different Mongolian dialects are spoken will give us a context that will make these folk songs more enjoyable. Secondly, I want to bring attention to the fact that most of these dialects are outside of the border of Mongolia, and we have a serious risk to lose them forever. I think Mongols from all over the world should do something about it. These dialects are the foundation of our folk songs. They make an irreplaceable part of Mongolian heritage. They are an invaluable treasure, not just for Mongols, but for all of us music lovers. Mongolian is the official language of Mongolia. It's also one of the two official languages of Inner Mongolia in China here. One of the two official languages of Kalmykia and Buryatia in Russia. The language belongs to the Mongolic language family along with these languages. Mongolian dialects are the variations of the Mongolian language, and they're spoken by Mongols. We have 3 million Mongols in Mongolia. They have a thriving language environment. We have 4.7 million Mongols in Inner Mongolia. However, we're rapidly losing speakers in cities. In the rural area, the language is still going strong. We have this many Mongols in Russia, and then they are also facing the same problem. The Mongolian that's being spoken today is very different from the Middle Mongolian, which was a language spoken back in the days of Genghis Khan and Mongol Empire. That huge difference mainly comes from two reasons. The first one is the strong influence from Tibet, as most Mongols converted from native shamanism to Tibetan Buddhism. The linguistic and cultural landscape have been reshaped by Tibetan culture. The second reason of that difference is the Manchurian policy towards Mongols after the conquer. So in this year, Mongolia fell into the hands of Manchurians, and then the Manchurians have placed some policies in place to keep Mongols down militarily. One of the policies is to lock Mongols in the region, not allowing them to migrate freely. So this weakened them militarily and also accelerated the forming of dialects. They also promoted Tibetan Buddhism further. Present day, if you look at modern Mongolian, there are some new trends forming. So for the Mongols who live in Russia and China, they learn words from Russian and Chinese. And then as the internet arises, all Mongols start to incorporate English words in their spoken language. So all of that add to the flavor of each dialect, and along with more flavor, there are more possibilities of expressions, better music, better folk songs being made. Let's take a look at the scripts. On the left here is the traditional Mongolian script used in Inner Mongolia. On the right here is the Cyrillic Mongolian script used in Mongolia. These are actually the same poetry, written differently. So the main difference between these two writing systems is that this one tolerates dialects better, What I mean by that is when you use a Cyrillic Mongolian script, essentially what you're doing is you take the Russian Cyrillic alphabet and you add a couple of letters so that it maps all the sounds in your dialect, and then you start spelling, right? And then after you are done, you have written down your own dialect. If someone else who speaks another dialect comes along, like he's gonna have trouble understand some of it, right? Because it's not his dialect. But for this one, it has a feature where like you have the same letter that could correspond to different sounds. So people in Siri, people could pronounce the same letter differently in their dialect, but when they write, they would write the same. So it's more like a one for all script type of thing. It tolerates dialects better. And also because this is a much older script, so learning this would give you direct access to the classics. However, if you are a beginner, if you want to learn Mongolian from scratch, and then this is the way to go. You should learn Cyrillic Mongolian script, and then you should learn the Halkh dialect, as that's the official language of Mongolia. The present-day Mongolian dialects can be roughly divided into three groups: Western, Central, and Eastern. These terms generally reflect where the speakers are, but not all the time. Western dialects are spoken in Kalmuk, parts of Xinjiang, West Mongolia, also West Inner Mongolia. You also have these two dialects were spoken in Eastern Inner Mongolia, so that's not in the West. So these terms don't always correlate with their geographic location. Central dialects are represented by the Halkh dialect, the official language in Mongolia, and the Chahar dialect, the official language in Inner Mongolia. Eastern dialects are represented by Kharchin dialect and Kharchin dialect, mostly spoken in Eastern Inner Mongolia. There's another language slash dialect that's worth mentioning, Dawud language. This is believed by many linguists to be the closest to the Middle Mongolian. The speakers reside somewhere here. So they, because of their geographical isolation, so they kept more features from the old days. So now let's look closely by countries and regions, starting with Mongolia. So Mongolia is mostly Halkh Mongolian speaking, and then you have relatively unified language, because once you push the Cyrillic Mongolian script, like we talked about before, as you are learning the script, you are essentially learning the dialect as well, right? So most of Mongols in Mongolia, they speak Halkh dialect and its variations. You can also find the Wirat speakers like the west, and then you can find Buryat speakers in the north here and here. And these days, as the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, becomes more and more international, there are a lot of like Mongols from other parts of the world who move there. So in Syria, you can find like all Mongolian dialects in this capital. There are also Turkic languages spoken in Mongolia by ethnic minorities such as Kazakhs and Tuvan, but that's another story. Now let's take a look at Russia. So in Russia, you have Kalmuk dialect in Kalmykia, which is a Western dialect, and then these guys have a very strong identity because of Soviet oppression. Soviet actually like deported them in entirety to Siberia, and then so a long train ride, and then other people died along the way, and then when they returned to their hometown, the common suffering has really reinforced their identity. So the language is going strong, and then the identity is going strong in Kalmykia, despite being so far away from the Mongolia proper. They still retain a strong sense of pride in their heritage. Now, Buryatia, these guys speak a Western dialect, and then their language is also spoken in Mongolia and Inner Mongolia. There's an interesting story about them. When the Soviet took power, the elites in this region they fled from the Red Army, and then they went to Inner Mongolia to settle. So it created this situation where most of the commoners stayed in this republic, and then the elites are actually here now and becoming a ethnic minority in Inner Mongolia. Their language is severely endangered in Buryatia. They're doing fine here relatively, but here it's a big trouble. Like young people speak more Russian these days. So let's talk about Mongolic languages in China. So this map has a typo here. This is not Mongolian languages, this is Mongolic languages. So you have Mongolian being the representative of the Mongolic languages, and then you also have mentions of Dagur. We talked about the language that is supposed to be the closest to Middle Mongolian, and then you have Bao'an language here, you have Dongxiang language in Gansu province, Mogul language in Qinghai province. So these are languages that are parallel to Mongolian. Interestingly, it is to the south of the Mongolian border where things start to get more interesting. The region is linguistically and culturally more diverse. There's a strong sense of being threatened. The risk of ceasing to exist as a distinct people is so real that people band together to resist it. Take the Mongols in Xinjiang, for example. Their Mongolian-speaking schools were closed forcefully decades ago, but they still kept their language going through homeschooling. Same goes for the Qinghai province, the third Mongols in this area. They have no autonomous region status at all, but they still try their best to preserve their identity. The Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region has a slightly better deal because of its status. So the schools, Mongolian-speaking schools in the region were not closed. However, last year there was a educational reform forced upon all the Mongolian-speaking schools. Now there's a big chunk of the curriculum that used to be taught in Mongolian are required now to be taught in Chinese. So the pressure is on. Now, what is at stake here? Like, what happens if we lose the language? Like, what loss are we talking about here? Now, on this map, you can see the broad strokes of like some examples of dialects, but they are not all. But it gives you a rough idea. So you starting from top, you can see the Barak dialect, Buryat dialect, you have the Kharchin dialect, you have Kharchin dialect here, you have Balin dialect here, Chahar dialect, Ordos dialect, Vichne dialect, and there are many sub-dialects in the region that are not marked on this map, and you are going to see them in the following slides. Now let's take a look at the actual people who speak these dialects, starting with Western dialect speakers. So all of these are Western dialect speakers. Some of them refer to themselves using tribe names, some of them use an area's name, but the one thing in common is that they all speak a variant of Western dialect. Moving on to Central dialect speakers. The most important two Central dialects are Halkh and Chahar. Halkh dialect is the official language of Mongolia. Chahar dialect is the official language of Inner Mongolia. Just a side note, this photo is actually taken in Inner Mongolia. So there are actually Halkh tribe in Inner Mongolia as well. So not all Halkh are in Outer Mongolia. And then you can see some other examples of Central dialect speakers. Sunit, Uzumchin, Avak, Uchit, Darkhan, Ordos. And then the list is not complete. Now let's take a look at Eastern dialect speakers. Most people in Inner Mongolia speak a variant of Eastern dialects, with Kharchin dialect being the one with the largest number of speakers. And you guessed it, this list is also not complete. The interesting fact about Eastern dialect is that although it's not official language, but it is spoken by the most Inner Mongolians, so it is the de facto day-to-day language in Inner Mongolia for most Inner Mongolians. So the point I'm trying to make is that the only dialect that is not threatened is the Halkh dialect, the official language of Mongolia. The rest of all these Mongolian dialects are in serious danger. So we really need to act to preserve these dialects. For Mongols, all of us have a duty to start small, to do what we can. So everybody please start recording, documenting, uploading anything you can find about these dialects. Please do speak, write, and sing in your dialect. Record them, make videos, share them, right? Also for non-Mongolian speakers, we need your help too. Please share this video with friends and family that might be interested in this topic. Thank you for watching this video. I'll be making more videos about Mongolian music. If you are interested, subscribe and click on the notification bell. See you in the comment section. Have a good day.